Welcome, everybody. My name is Michelle Hayward, and I'm a strategic business coach where I help my fellow engineers become entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs. So I help technical professionals learn the backside of business because they're really great technical experts, but they just need to learn the business side so they can start their own design or consulting firms. And today, as my guest, I have Karen Auld, and that's what she did. She will tell her story of how she ended up becoming an independent consultant. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks so much for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
You're quite welcome. Can you tell the audience how you got started as a consultant and your background as well?
Sure. So my background is in environmental science and engineering. And I was very fortunate when I was still in college. I landed a big corporate job, and everyone said, "My goodness, you hit the lottery," because and all my friends were pretty much hated me because I was the only one who had a job right out of college, well, still in college. And so I was working for a very large corporation, one that I'm sure people have products of theirs in their home. And so I worked there for 11 years, and I worked as an environmental health and safety professional, different jobs, through my tenure there. And one day our vice president came into the conference room and he showed a graph of our sales, and our sales were like this, and then beep, straight down. So we kind of knew there'd be some layoffs. When they told me I was re-engineered, and that my position wasn't needed any longer. So that was 11 years with that corporation, and I was like, okay, now what do I do? So at the time, I was working on some big corporate projects. In fact, I was splitting my time between this operating company doing, environmental engineering stuff, and then I was also working at the corporate headquarters. So I was very fortunate because even though I was being laid off, the corporate headquarters still wanted me to work on some of these projects. So even though I was re-engineered, they were like, how do we keep you here? And I said, well, if I come back as a consultant, maybe you could keep me here. And they were just like, I had this work, and they said, yeah, let's do it. So I was very fortunate that the person I was doing the work for was also the head corporate attorney for the whole corporation. And again, this is a multinational firm. So you talk about, whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, spirit, whatever, it was all lined up for me to start my own business. I was very, very fortunate. And so he took my severance package and he redlined everywhere that said I couldn't work for the corporation, as a consultant. And because it was in my buyout package, it was like, wow. Until the whole time I was getting severance, I couldn't work for the corporation as a consultant. So he fixed that. And I started my own business maybe it was about a month after I was laid off, and I kind of took 2 weeks to just lay on the couch, and then I said, I have to figure out, am I an LLC? Am I this? Or I have to start a business. So so I was very fortunate that right away I had clients, and I had work, and and that's kind of how it started. And I had my own consulting firm for 8 years until a competing firm bought that business. And in fact, today I still work for a firm, though I do coaching like you, I do that on the side. So so it's interesting because I keep thinking I'm going to leave this consulting firm, but so far it's been interesting having a job, so I still work for somebody right now. But yeah, 8 years I was on my own.
So I want to, a series of questions came about. So let's first talk about the shock of being laid off, because we have a lot of viewers who were shocked being laid off as an engineer, because for those of you, most people say, well, you're an engineer, and they teach us even in college, oh, it's a safe career path. You know, everybody needs an engineer, but yet you were laid off. I've been fortunate. My brother, who's an electrical engineer, has been laid off. I've had several coworkers who are engineers that have been laid off. What was, you discussed that initial shock. Mm-hmm. Then you went and told us how the first 2 weeks you were at home on the couch. What was your thought process from being laid off and like, but this can't be real?
Yeah, it was really interesting because, especially in this corporation, and I'm sure a lot of you that are engineers that are working, working now, when you're on the job site, what do they always say? Safety first, right? So I'm like, hey, my job is fine, like who's gonna stop, who's gonna cut safety, who's gonna cut, all this compliance stuff that I did. And so yeah, it was definitely shocking. But for me, I've always, number one, I like change. I'm one of those few people that I really embrace change, and I really, I'm just always like, ooh, like this could be exciting, So my brain goes there first, which is, is fantastic. It keeps me up. But I think there was definitely a, like, you have to, my mindset went to, oh wow, I wonder if I would have done that report a little faster, or that one time where I told my boss, you know what, there's no value in this project that you want me to do. And, and I had like a professional argument, with my boss. I'm thinking, so your brain goes there. And, I had to kind of quit it. And luckily I had been doing a lot of inner work, before that. I was always into affirmations and mindset and like the power of the subconscious mind. So I had that foundation so that it wasn't so scary.
Got you. I love it. I think that's something a lot of engineers don't deal well with change.
Yeah.
If you go back to them and tell them to change a drawing, but their procedure is correct, that's fine. This calculation is too close to where we said what I want to say, the specs are. They're fine with that because the specs aren't going to change.
Right.
We change some specs on them. They want to know why, who did it. And so you would be one of the other type of engineers like me who are okay with change.
Yeah.
There are some, they're going to go eat the same thing. They're going to sit the same place. They're going to take the same route. Even if it's an accident, they have to sit there for 4 hours. They're not going to, they don't do well with change at all. So, so this is how you have an engineer in your family and they don't have a degree. They're really an engineer.
Yes. Yes.
So those were the first 2 weeks. The next 2 weeks, you're like, wait, I have a business to put together. This is where a lot of engineers don't understand. And you did a lot in 2 weeks. Can you tell us in those 2 weeks what you did and where we know you ended up with a contract or working for your former employer? But what did you learn through those 2 weeks that most people have to go get an MBA for, but you were actually in action for 2 weeks to get your business up and running?
Yeah, the first thing I did, my husband fortunately has his own business. He's an architect. And so we have a very good accountant. So I went to my accountant first because he was like the one professional person that I really trusted. So I went to him and said, Mr. Mattiotti, what do I do? And I was like, So he gave me some advice. He gave me, like, here's who you need to talk to. So I went to the Small Business Development Center that is local to me. And there's an attorney there who's, part of the counseling for these, like some people have SCORE is another one, another organization you can look at. And I went there and I asked questions, and I just said, if you were me, what would you do? And so they gave me some advice. Some of them told me not even to start a business. They told me to go through an agency. And I was just like, I knew the markups on that. And I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. So I want the money, so I didn't do that. But that was, some of the advice that I got. And through it all, it was, we had decided, because my whole thing was, I had no idea how long I was going to do this. And really at the time, the corporate attorney that I was telling you about, he was just trying to figure out, we needed to keep this project going, and he was trying to figure out how does he get a head count, within his organization for me. And so I was thinking, like probably within a few months, I'll be working for this corporation again. Mm-hmm. But we needed to keep this, and it was really just to keep this project that I was working on, to keep this project alive. So so I decided I was just a sole proprietor. Okay. We didn't even do an LLC in the beginning. And but then once I was like, a year, I think it was like a year and a half, then we went with the LLC. But I just, to do a sole proprietorship, you basically just need an EIN number to get a contract, and that was it. So I figured out. It's like I talked to these people at the Small Business Development Center, and then I called up the accounts receivable people at this corporation because I knew them, and I said, "Hey, if I'm going to be a consultant, what do you guys need from me?" And so they gave me, they told me what they needed. So I said, okay. So then I went back and said, how do I get an EIN number? And my accountant did that for me. And really that was it. And then, of course, like my first proposal, I had to sign, their terms and conditions. So I had that reviewed by an attorney. But really, it wasn't that many steps. It was pretty simple. And people, I think, overcomplicate it, and they think that they have to have, all these things in place. And again, I was very fortunate because I was walking into work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to go through, you went through your accounts receivable. Every company is different. Sometimes you have to go through your procurement group.
Exactly.
Company's procurement to find out what are the insurance, the liability insurance you have to carry, what's that dollar amount, because you may have gone out and got it, and then you find out you're too low. And I've seen that even with contractors, where they've worked on one side of a business and they come to do work, like we're an approved contract, like, for this business unit. This business unit has different terms because it's a higher liability, you are at higher risk working in there. And there are contractors who say, well, we'll pass up on opportunity. They don't want to get the increase in insurance.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that was like this was a desk job. This was writing policies and procedures. This was, very like low risk type work. Even for me, from an engineer standpoint, it was, there was no risk involved. No one's going to sue me for the type of policies and procedures I was writing, because it's all about management systems, and so ISO 14001, if anybody knows what that is. So that's what it was, all ISO policies and stuff. So yeah, it was the risk was like nothing for me. So I was like, great. But my second job, that was totally different. And I was like, I need, because I had to go through procurement. So they needed insurance, they needed, and again, it was just one of those things where I just said, okay, like I need insurance. Boom, what do I need to do? And it wasn't like I'm gonna, and I just figured I would make calls to people I trusted, number one, and I would figure out, okay, who did they have for insurance? Who did they, how did they do this? How much money did they pay? What was their liability? And when you ask questions, the majority of people really want to help.
Yes.
Especially, if you've been in a business for a while and somebody is new and comes up to you, they understand. They understand how you feel initially. It's tough. And they're willing to help, and they're willing to, just to give you advice. So, the big thing, and I do this with my coaching clients today, it's informational interviewing. So you come in there with, kind of 15 minutes of your time, and can I, here's my questions, boom, 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 about insurance. That's it. And then lots of times people will tell you more and more and more, because it's almost like you're stroking their ego, asking them questions and stuff, and you get a lot of valuable information. But you have to put yourself out there and start asking those questions.
I absolutely agree. Let me go back, because you brought up the second client where you put together a proposal and you went through procurement. Mm-hmm. If you could go back, let's say 3 years before you got laid off, but you knew it was coming, mm-hmm. would you have changed some of the things you had done at work? Would you have gone to talk to your marketing group? Would you have gone to talk to your procurement and accounts receivable? Would you have learned more about that side of how you hire consultants, mm-hmm. if you had known before then?
I was lucky because I didn't even know I was educating myself, because I hired a lot of consultants. I just, that was what I did. And we had a lot of third party, like regulatory compliance. So so somebody was coming in and auditing my work. So I got to see a lot of proposals, how are they written? I got to understand the market, of what really is the value of someone. I got to understand, so then now what happens, once somebody says yes, what happens to that? And this big corporation that I worked for, they could say yes to your proposal, but you may not execute the work and that first paycheck come in for like 4 weeks. So, or, it could be months. So I knew, to being, a sole proprietor, I knew that I needed to have a, upfront fee, so sign the proposal, boom, I'm getting this much money, because, cash flow was always an issue being a sole proprietor. I was in most people, you got to realize you're going to be a seller and you're going to be a doer.
Yes. So
you have to be comfortable with being a seller doer to have your own business. So I needed that money up front so that, I could market and do what I needed to do and then execute on the work. So, but yeah, I was very fortunate, and I had a lot of good examples of proposals, and I had bad examples of proposals. Exactly. So I was really, and I learned also from working with consultants how to write a good scope of work and to ensure that there wasn't scope creep, when in my work. So that was a huge thing that I was just, again, very fortunate that I kind of learned. I learned from doing, from being on that other side of the fence, which is great now that I am a consultant, because I understand. I was in the people that I'm serving, I was in their shoes. Exactly. I understand, and I understand the words that they need to sell it to management.
Exactly. Absolutely agree. I want to pick up on hone in on some words that you said. Cash flow. Cash flow. I have run into more entrepreneurs, not even necessarily engineers, who don't understand cash flow. Yeah. So a lot of people, I've had a client earlier this year who never asked for upfront money. I said, what do you mean you don't ask for upfront money? I said, you can incentivize people, give them a 2% discount if they're paying you upfront, and as well as a longer contract. And she was like, people do that? I said, how do you feed your kids? So it is not unheard of to ask for upfront, a down payment or something along those lines. Yep. I'm in a different industry, so I try not to use the terminology we use, but more of a down payment. So what happens is once they lock in that contract, you're saying put up some money to guarantee we're going to finish it. That's pretty much what you're trying to say. But any materials, any time that you spend on a project, and let's say the company goes belly up, it's called Enron. You know, you at least got something for some of your time. You may not recoup all of it. And it's really difficult for some new entrepreneurs, some new consultants and design firms to understand that. So I was like, no. I know it's $1 million contract. You need to go ask for $100,000 because you're going to burn that your burn rate is that you've already put money into doing a proposal. Yeah. So I expressed that. So I love that you brought in cash flow. The next word you said, scope of work and scope creep. Let's talk about scope of work and scope creep, because I'm in the heavy construction side, and I see it often. And as a client's agent, it's like, well, you guys can do that. We surely can. It's called a change order.
That's right.
There's no creeping around here, you know? So let me ask you, scope of work. When you said you've seen good scope and bad scopes, give us some characteristics of what's in a bad scope of work.
I think a bad scope.
Or not any.
A bad, like what I usually do is I think you should think about when you're writing a proposal, like think back on SMART goals. You know, so specific, measurable, you know, like
attainable.
Yeah, time bound, all those things. Because what happens is if you, like a lot of times, especially if a client, let's say, you know, like I'm doing a project right now for a client who, they basically screwed up some regulatory reporting and they don't understand why. So we're doing this kind of like a gap analysis. We're looking at the whole process and we're saying, okay, where did the gap occur? And then we're also saying, where did the system break down? Where did, you know, like just like, do you understand? Let's map out this whole process. So as we were going through it, the client says to me, oh, you know, like let's do, so we figured out where one of the gaps were. Let's set up a meeting, talk to the people there, and then let's look at their data. And I'm like, no, like same thing. Like you said, oh, sorry, there's a cat. I'm like, you're right. That's a change order. You know, my whole thing was to be here with you during the day. We found where the gap was. We found, you know, we found this. So yay, we did it. You know? But now we're done. Exactly. I have no problem taking this further with you. So he was a little, you know, fluffy about the whole thing, and he was like, well, you know, like this is part of the gap analysis. And I went, no, let's go back to the proposal. And the proposal said, me, 2 days in a conference room, yada, 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 da, 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 boom. It was just, this is it. And he, you know, he still tried, you know, and I said, no, I'm sorry. This is what the project is. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, we'll get into these like time and materials type of proposals where it can be tough, and it can be, you know, your client can just try to, you know, stretch and squeeze you as much as they can, and you have to, the better your scope, you know, even I would rather write 10 proposals and then be very niched than have this big proposal that's trying to capture everything, and then there's all this scope creep, and it's gray. You know, I have a lot of colleagues that I work with who feel very differently than I do, and they want these like general service contracts for the whole year. And I'm just like, ugh, I don't know. For me, that doesn't work. It doesn't work.
And see, and because I know there are people like you who want it very niche, people who want a general services contract, which means it's an ongoing contract. You renew it every 12 months, 5 years, or it's up every 3, renewable for 2. And then there's some that do very project specific type work. So I understand what I love to do, and we always let contractors do exceptions. They're taking exceptions to whatever. And you wouldn't believe contractors will come back and be like, that wasn't in our scope, that wasn't in the bid package. And we're like, go to page such and such, look at drawing such and such, like, oh, well, we didn't know. Talking about, look at your exception sheet. You didn't take exception to it.
Yeah.
And it's at the end of a project and they want to go, we're going to put in a change order for such and such. Okay, you can put it in. They put it in, denied. And we said, this would, you fail to put in your exceptions. You fail to do this. Henceforth, the client owes you nothing. And for those who are like, oh my God, that's horrible. Most time clients will pay something, but they're not going to pay all of it because you didn't look at the details or you made some certain assumptions.
Yeah.
And even like you said, Karen, call and ask questions.
Yeah.
So, and if you have good relationships, like you started working for your employer, when you have good relationships with your clients, they're like, you know what? Even if it is your error, a lot of times they'll still pay it. If you have good, if it's a first time client, you don't generally push those too many buttons.
Yeah, no, but, yeah, and I think like I have clients now that I do general service contracts with. Like I've known them for years, you know, like years and years. So I have no problem. They know me. I know them. I don't have any problem at all. But like when you're first working with a client, the more you can niche and the more you can get your proposal as clear as you can, the better off you are. Because a lot of people, especially like for me, environmental health and safety, a lot of times like I get pulled in because somebody got a fine, somebody got caught doing something, right? Mm-hmm. Or they get a new piece of equipment and they're like, oh my gosh, like they're scaling they're scaling a business. They've never had this type of piece of equipment. They have no idea what to do. So like, it's my job to educate them to what they need and, and put that proposal, put that in the proposal. And a lot of times we're doing a lot of educating. And like you said, putting the proposal together, I'm giving them lots of information.
Yes.
So that's another reason why I try to get that up front, pay back, and put that in there. Yeah.
And it's a pro and a con for those of you who've never been on the proposal side, where you will get people to actually ask you to bid work. They never have an intention to hire you. They want specifically your plan on how you intend to do work for them. And they have the company they are going to hire. And they said, oh, you didn't win it. And then they go to the other company. This is how we want you to set up the project and execute it.
Totally. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know it happens all the time. I had a client, a big project, I scoped it all out for them in this proposal and we didn't win. And then I see later, I go back to help him with something else and I see them doing exactly, what I had proposed. And I said, oh, who did that for you guys? Yeah,
I've seen it. I've heard horror, because even it's sort of like giving KFC Chick-fil-A's recipe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not going to be exact. They both sell chicken, but it's not going to be exactly the same. The customer service, number one, is going to be different,
Yeah.
But I've had one of the structural engineers I've worked with, he spec'd out the details, everything. He had done the calculation. They weren't finalized, nothing been stamped. The client decided to let us go. And they built it to unstamped, unverified calculations. Mm-hmm. Then they called us back and said, there's an issue. They're like, well, they did not use the same materials that were spec'd. They didn't take into account. He was like, it was such a mess until he said, I'm not trying to get sued. You need to. He literally said he told the owners to shut it down, and he would call and turn them in the piece of equipment. That's how bad it was. He said because at the end of the day, somebody gets hurt. is going back to my calculations.
That's right. That's right.
Even though I didn't stamp it, it's coming back to me.
Mm-hmm.
And because you didn't follow everything is on. So yeah, it's a pro and a con when we do it. And so understanding, like you said, the terms and conditions, understanding what you're putting in proposals, and understanding how some clients are not as, how do I put it, honest as others.
Yeah.
So, and they may not even disclose everything to the other contractor. So it's always very interesting. So you always try to work with people who have good integrity. That's the word I'm looking for, integrity, to bid with. And you never know. You really don't know inside a large company who has the integrity. So
yeah, you don't know. And I think one of the things that if you're new at this, you need to make sure that you're measuring how much time you're spending on proposals. Because if you got client X and you've done 3 proposals for them and you're not getting any work, well, guess what? When the 4th one comes, I don't care if it's like the glitziest, prettiest project that you've been dying to work on. You just say, you may have to just pass because that person isn't in integrity and that person isn't, or like I've had clients that will sit down with you and say, hey, Karen, this is the reason why you guys didn't win.
Yeah.
And especially when I was a small firm, a lot of times they wanted the security of a big firm.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to be smart about what type of work I could bid on and what kind of work I knew I could undercut the big guys on. And,
yes.
And that's what I used to do. I mean, I knew what the big guys charged. So I found very quickly, what I knew people were going to buy from me. And for me, it was a lot of training. It was a lot of, even back then I was doing coaching. I didn't know I was coaching back then, but I was. I was doing a lot of meeting facilitation, and I was doing a lot of auditing because here I was a professional who understood, environmental health and safety. But maybe do they want a one-man show doing all the calcs for a very complex air permit? Probably not. And you know what? And I don't know if I want to do that by myself either. So, but I can audit that. I can, I can go back and look at it and say, yes, I agree with what this consultant did, or I could say, no, this isn't compliant. So that's where I figured out, I can make money, I can undercut the big guys, and I can add value. And my risk was so much lower.
Yes, exactly. So let's talk about clients. Like you said, identifying your clients, identifying your niche where you knew you could outcompete larger mid-sized firms. How did you go about determining where your niche was and how to position yourself to win more work?
Well, first of all, one of the very first things that I did was I wrote down all the things that I really liked to do. Because I knew if I liked doing this, I would just do it better. So there's these reports that have to be done every single year in environmental health and safety. And I could have made, a ton of money just doing those reports, but I hated them. I hate doing them. So I just was like, okay, you know what? I don't want to do this. So I thought, what do I love to do? I love training. I will, put me in front of a classroom and, and I prided myself because I knew I made it. I made environmental health and safety not boring. And it can be, and I know any engineer who's watching this is back to a very boring, environmental health and safety class.
Yes.
And I made, I pride myself on making it interesting and what's in it for me? What's in it for, why do I have to worry about this? And I knew I was good at that. So I was like, okay, boom, how do I do that well? I do that well, so how do I sell that? So, I tried, different things that I knew could be done differently. And then, I knew, again, auditing. I loved auditing because auditing is so much fun because you get sometimes like 2 days, or it could be a week at a facility, and you're in there going through their files, checking everything. But the cool thing is you get to go to all these different industries and see how things are made. And I love that. And you really get to share best practices too. And I love that too. So like then I was very good at strategic planning, just getting people from A to Z a lot quicker. So I would help people with that too. But those were the things that I loved, and that's what I concentrated my business on. And I knew enough about those areas that I knew how to undercut the big guys. So yeah, so it was fun. And the funny thing is I do all that work today for the firm that I work with, but we're like the 6th largest consulting firm in the world. So it's very different.
Very, very much so. So I loved your approach in determining what service offerings you were going to provide to clients, because a lot of people go, well, this is what I did at my former employer, so I'm going to do the exact same thing. Or I can make this X amount per hour by offering these services. So I want to go into pricing. How did you determine, and not everybody has this experience. I have data on how to do pricing. You had data on how to do pricing, but it doesn't necessarily negate on what your prices are going to be. So how did you, once you knew what your service offerings were, how did you determine what pricing you were going to use for your clients?
There were two different ways I looked at it. Number one is I looked at it, how much money did I want to make? So I just basically, took the year and said, okay, this is how much money I want to make. And so what does that break down to an hourly rate? And I just, this is my goal. My goal was to make this much money. So if I make this much money, that means, I need to this much work. And I also knew my conversion rate. So I knew out of like 4 proposals, 2 were going to hit. So that meant if I wanted to do, double that, I needed to send out 8 proposals that month, right? So I knew what I needed to do to hit the number that I wanted. So I basically like reverse engineered everything. I never was really worried about I knew what an audit should go for. I knew how much somebody was going to pay me for a day. But you know what, I have to say, there was a lot of times where if there was a project that somebody really wanted me, like that yucky, annual report, and I had a really good client who, trusted me, they wanted to work with me, they're like, Karen, can you please do this 312 report for me? And I'd be like, ugh, I don't want to do it. But I'd like, okay. So I would just throw out some huge numbers sometimes and just see what they would say. And sometimes they said yes. And I was like, okay, well, guess what? Karen's going to the spa this month because I made extra money on that report. But, I have to say, it was something that I never stressed about it. I never, I really just reverse engineered it. Where did I want to be, in a 12-month time frame? And then, again, and I knew what clients I needed. I knew, okay, they're bidding out to this guy. If I can undercut them, boom, I'm good. I also had clients where I would just say, and sometimes, they'd say, well, Karen, that's not fair. But sometimes I'd say, what's your budget? They'd tell me $3,000. I'd say, okay, guess what? It costs, $2,750 or $29.50. Seriously, sometimes you'll be surprised if you ask. But they'll tell you. I mean, I remember the first time that happened to me. I just, because I really I had no idea what to price this thing. And I said to the guy, well, what's your budget? And he told me, and I really nearly fell off my chair because I didn't think, number one, it was a number a lot higher than I thought. And number two, it was like, I didn't think he would tell me. I know I would have never told. Yeah. You know what I mean? So yes. He was like, he wanted the work done. He really wanted me to do it. And, he was just like, look, stay within this boundary and we're cool. And I'm like, oh, we're super cool, because it was way more than I was going to charge.
So I even have some in there for contingency.
Yeah,
exactly. To go buy the spa.
Totally good. Yeah. But I think people, like, again, when you're starting a business, people get hung up on my rate. Like, what should my rate be? And they spend weeks and weeks doing research and doing all this kind of stuff. And I'm not saying to go blindly into something, but if you've been in the field, you know what don't make yourself crazy on that. Yeah. I mean, it's just don't.
I always make sure people understand now your working rate is different than when you have to travel and you're doing meal and hotel. And I said, that's completely different. And that needs to be included in your proposal and in your contract. And they get, like you said, they get so stuck on their hourly rate, they forget about those other expenditures.
Totally.
Or even I'm saying this contract amount, this amount only includes 3 field visits for 2 people, 2 hotel rooms, 1 rental car, or an air travel coach for 2. They leave all of that out, and they're like, "We took a hit." I said, "You didn't add that in," and they were like, "I didn't know to do that."
Yeah.
Because they're stuck on an hourly rate and there are other expenditures in there. They include in their hourly rate. Some of them don't even include in their overhead costs.
Right.
Well, I work from home. I don't have overhead costs. I'm like, oh, you got overhead costs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think too, like, you can, I do a lot of things lump sum because my work is it's very discreet. So like I'm going to somebody's doing an audit. I'm going to somebody's place for 3 days. It's going to take me maybe a day and a half to write the report. I know what my expenses are going to be, and you mark those up. You have your contingency, and boom, it's done. But like you have to be. You have to get in the habit of spending that time up front to make sure that your costs are good. We also get we get held up in the proposal writing sometimes that we don't do a good job on the back end with costs, and make up your own costing sheet. I had a costing sheet, just with a simple Excel spreadsheet, so it had like I always had like an overhead percentage. I forgot what I used to do. I think it was it was low though. It was like maybe 5% for overhead.
I was thinking 12.
Yeah, like my company now it's 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we I had these things in there that just they just self-calculate, and then I always had like the expenses part. I just what I did was I just wrote down a ton of different expenses, and was it did I have that on the job? So at least it was on the sheet for me to look at while I was pricing, to say, okay, yes, do I have to worry about this or no? And then you just would jog your memory while you were doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because clients will give you their straight bid sheet, but it leaves out anything extra, and so you absolutely need a costing sheet. I absolutely agree. I want to ask you about, you're talking about bidding projects. You knew what your conversion rate was. You bid 4, you won 2. You're like, okay, well, I need to bid 8, so I'll win 4. How did you plan out for the work you had to do for all those clients you had those multiple contracts going on at the same time? How did you plan out your day? Because this does get frustrating or difficult from people who used to corporate, and now they're working from home. They have the cat running around, the dog's barking. Of course, now if the kids are sick or something, they're the ones that's supposed to, how did you plan out your work day and plan out your clients' work to be done?
Sometimes good, sometimes bad. I mean, that's how it is. I ran into it a couple times. And still, you know, to this day, you know, we talk about this in the firm that I work with now. It's like when you're a seller or doer, there's a lot of times where you'll be doing so much that the sales funnel just all of a sudden is, bloop, there's nothing coming in. Now, so you have to know, and really what you need to do is just plot out, you know, and I always do things in 90-day increments. And it's funny, Michelle and I have a coach, and she does the same thing. And I was like, hey, I invented that, you know, but that's kind of how that's how I did my work. Because I knew, you know, okay, here's where, you know, so I just, every quarter I would sit down and say, okay, what do I have to do? How much money's coming in? When am I going to stop? You know, like when is the revenue going to stop coming in? Mm-hmm. So about a month before that, I better get 4 proposals written, yep. You know, or I better be like, you know, I was lucky that, you know, usually with a client when I was on site, I would find the opportunity, you know, so you always just have to have, you can't have those, you know, be your head in the ground. And as engineers, we can do this, you know, so we got our blinders on, we're working. There's a huge opportunity right here, but we're just so focused, we lose it. So you always have to have that opportunity, you know, those wide eyes, you know, you just have to always be looking for the next opportunity. Absolutely. And, you know, that's the hard part. I think I was very lucky too that, like, I'm a morning person. I mean, my genius time is in the morning. So I would get up early, crank out some work, you know, and then take a break. But that's, you know, I had to figure out how I worked so that I could get the work done at home. Because there are distractions, and you are, you know, it's like, ooh, I could easily go do some laundry right now, you know. And, you know, and especially, I mean, and we all know it, you get to those projects and there's parts of them where you just don't want to do. I mean, you just don't want to do it. Every project has that point, and you just have to have discipline and, you know, harmony and a rhythm. And you have to figure it out. Like, you have to know how you feel. And if something doesn't feel right, then you're not in that rhythm yet. You know, you're not in and you know, throw out the word balance. You're not going to feel balanced. Just let that go. Let that go. But you know, where's the harmony? Where's the balance? I got to the point where I never worked on a Friday. I mean, I just didn't work on a Friday. You know, I did, I mean, like, work as in, like, work. Like, I might have wrote a proposal, or, you know, took somebody out to lunch, or, you know, like, did a site visit to, you know, to market or something like that. But I never did, like, crunch engineering stuff on a Friday because I was spent.
I love it. So you learn how to build on your life as opposed to you building your life around your business, which is what we do in corporate.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I still, like, you know, when I took this job, so when somebody bought my business and I took a job again, you know, I made it very clear. I'm like, look, I am no 9-to-5er anymore. Like, that's gone. No. And I tell them all the time, you're not, if you expect me to be here 9 to 5, you are not going to get all of Karen that you should be. So just let me do my thing and let me prove to you that you're going to be happy. And so
let's talk about that. 8 years a consultant. What made you sell your firm and go back into corporate?
I was basically, so I was a solopreneur for 8 years. I had people that worked for me part-time, but I had no employees, like no full-time employees. And, but I got nice and busy. And I said, so I had one kid working for me in the summer. And when he went back to school, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I can't do all this by myself. I mean, like, you know, this is just, it's too much. So I didn't know what to do. And I was petrified to hire somebody and be responsible for them. And I really was just at a crossroads. Okay, like, what do I need to do? And to be honest with you, I was like, I was not really enjoying the work. I plateaued to what I could do for my clients as a solopreneur.
Okay.
And a lot of the strategic stuff I was saying about, before, I was asked to do those kind of things, but I was never involved with the implementation because I didn't have a team to help me do that. So I was trying, so I'm thinking, oh gosh, how am I going to scale this? Like, what can I do? And I really, to be honest with you, I said a prayer and I said, God, I'm just totally confused right now. I don't know what to do. And 2 days later, a guy that I used to use as a consultant when I worked for this corporation calls me up and says, hey, Karen, we've been watching you. We know what your business is doing. We'd like to talk. And I was like, oh, okay. And they had subbed work to me, this consulting firm. And so, I met with them and they said, we want you to come work with us. We want you to build this New Jersey presence, blah, blah, blah. And so that's what I did. So it was crazy. I mean, I really didn't think I could go back to working for somebody. But it ended up, it was 2008. And like I said earlier, my husband's an architect. So when everything crashed, nobody's building. Well, guess what? Nobody needs an architect, right?
Yes.
So it was really a gift, again, from God, universe, whatever you want to call it, that I had a steady, I had a steady paycheck. We didn't have to buy benefits anymore and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it was crazy when that happened. It happened, I don't know, it just happened so smoothly. And the firm that I work for now, I'm doing like high level strategic stuff, a lot of coaching, a lot of things that I really enjoy to do, like a lot of, things that are not what most EHS engineers, professionals do. So, yeah, I haven't gone back. I mean, I haven't started my own consulting firm in that, stage. I know I will at some point, doing like individual coaching and more, like what I want to say, like life coaching and helping people. I'm branded as what's called the weight loss coach to help people around procrastination and just people living their dreams, which has, nothing to do with engineering. But, that's still, I'm still building that business. And I'm not ready to walk away from what I do, now to just, do that business full time.
Gotcha. Absolutely love it. So, Karen, this has been absolutely phenomenal because you've gone through and told us where you started, how you got started, how fortunate you were, your employer, even working for a lawyer who redlined your severance package, to understanding, being positioned in your corporate job where you understood how to be a consultant, what to do, what not to do. So I would say you absolutely came through a very fortunate path to lead you, like you said, out the door to being a consultant and building your business. And I do want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story. What was the best part about all of what you said? You was like, okay, I'll just go figure it out.
Yep.
And that's what a lot of people won't do. They're like, well, I don't know how to do it, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I think as engineers, we are so black and white sometimes. We are, so what is the way to do this? And unfortunately, in business, you have to be nimble. You have to be, just ready to go, go left, go right. You just have to sometimes make a decision. And guess what? If that decision is the right decision, you just change it tomorrow. I mean, it's not, it's you to start a business, you just have to start.
Yes.
That's it.
Exactly.
You got to start. And it's scary. I mean, it's definitely, like, even just just little things like proofreading an email and stuff. I'd like when I started working by myself, I'd be like, oh, like who's gonna read this? And I was like, well, I guess my husband's got to read it, or my mom's got to read it, or my sister's got to read it. But that's that's just how it is. And the coolest thing, and like we were talking about this informational interviewing, if you're gonna go out on your own, find those people that will, hold your hand, that'll have lunch with you, that'll read those emails, that'll look at those proposals and not charge you. And just be an advocate, and you'll find them. You'll absolutely find them. And it makes the whole process a lot less scary. So you have to, a lot of us engineers are also a little introverted. We don't like to ask for help because we're trained to know everything and to figure everything out and, blah, blah, blah. But this is different. Business is different. And you've got to find those strategic partners and those people that are going to, just be your support and be your cheerleader. So, I think that's just so important. And that's when the fear comes in, is when we're all by ourselves.
I agree. It's that saying, because you have nobody to bounce those ideas off. Because while we're in Cube City, it's other people there with us. Say, hey, did you see this part in the spec? Did you see that email? And you go back and we always talked about this. I remember in undergrad, but we go to professor like, why do we each have to take the test individually? They say, because somebody may be sick one day and you have to do it alone. But and that does happen when you're out on your own. But it's like in corporate, you will work as a team, but there will be days you have to stand there alone and be able to provide those answers. So it is very important. And like you said, finding your tribe, finding that group of supporters who are going to help give you direction and support is truly key, because you're going to be at home during the day and you may need to pick up the phone or send a text to somebody like, I won this contract. I'm not sure I can do this work.
Yep.
Can we go meet for coffee? And they will sit there and coach you through it and break down, okay, well, what don't you understand you can't do? And you will start spouting out everything. It's like, so again, why are you spazzing out over not being able to provide this service to this client? And it's just all in your head. It's all mental. Yeah.
And probably the best thing I did too, one of the things that I have to mention is that I had a coach, but I had it was more of a life coach. It was more of a, life work balance kind of coaching and like, what did I really want to do? Because I was getting into coaching myself, but, people that do what you do, Michelle, that there are people out there that can help you through, this, when you feel stuck, when you feel like, I just don't know what the next step is for my business. Sometimes you just need that extra set of eyes, somebody to look at the picture for you, because you're just too close to it. And as engineers, oh my gosh, can we be too close to things and be in the weeds? And, we're going to analyze everything, oh my gosh, and we have to, that tendency, when you're doing the work, go ahead, be all in the weeds, be detail oriented, whatever. But when you're running your business, totally different thing. So, that seller doer, you're going to be both. So, be able to do that. And that's when the coach can really help on the seller and the business side of it for sure.
I know I was supposed to be wrapping up, but you keep bringing up some stuff.
Sorry.
So, like you said, you're the seller and the doer. And you had mentioned before how a lot of engineers, analytical people are introverts. What I have found, and let me know if you have an entrepreneur or a business owner who's an introvert, they usually have a partner.
Yes.
Who's an extrovert.
Yes.
Or an ambivert. They sit in the middle, who really does the sales portion. They make those connections. They do the business development. Have you seen that to be true as well, still in the tech age we're in?
Oh, totally. I mean, I just, last week, I think it was, I went out on a sales call with someone because, they knew that I could get to the core of what the client really, really needed. Where this guy, it was like remediation stuff, very technical, this is contaminating this, blah, 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 right? I don't do that dirty stuff anymore, you know? So what I do is I come in there and do the needs assessment. I sit there with them and say, okay, so, you know, the state said this, your corporation says this, blah, blah, blah. Let's put it all together and then make a scope of work. You know, so like you have to, yeah, and I've always paired very well with the very introverted engineer. I mean, I can be very introverted myself, especially when I'm in the work. You know, I don't just let me do my thing, you know. But from a sales standpoint, that's when my strategic, you know, the strategic thinking comes, and like the big picture thinking comes, and even like from understanding how to set goals properly, that's where that comes in. It's like, okay, we need to get you, this is your goal, we need to get you there. How are we going to get you there? And that's where, you know, I come in and do a lot of those partnering with the introverted. And that's, in fact, when the people that bought my business, it's exactly what it was. The guy who came to me, he was the introvert, and he needed me. He needed somebody, you know, he needed somebody to go, you know, like Karen will go to those networking events, you know, and I hate them, you know, I totally, but once the conversation gets going, I'm fine, you know, like, so, like, I just have to get over a hump of being, you know, a little introverted. And then I'm like, because I like hearing people's stories. I like hearing, like, let's solve a problem. Like, that to me is like just so much fun. And that's, you know, that's the role I play.
Good. So let's go to step into business development.
Okay.
Right quick. So a lot of people, it's not even engineering thing. They don't understand business development. They don't understand cultivating relationships. And that's really where a lot of your business comes from. It's repeat people you already have relationships with, and very few people who are just brand new to you. What did you do as far as business development?
Well, one, you got to love on the people when you got them. I mean, that's number one, you know, and I think, you know, one of the big things is you got to ask them, you know, when you do a project, you know, was everything okay? You know, just like get feedback. I mean, that's number one. And people love to do that. So, and that just helps you when you have those kind of conversations. It helps you, again, to learn, you know, what they want, like even communication style. You know, I have one client who, if I could send him 4 emails every day, and he would be thrilled. And then I've got one client who I send him 1 email, and he's like, Karen, you're flooding my inbox, you know. Like, so you know, you have to know these things, you know, because a lot of what it is, it's about relationship, you know. So you have to cultivate those relationships, you know, understand, you know, people want to talk about their kids, you know, people want to talk about sports, you know, all these things that, like, inside of my project file, I got written down, you know, 3 dogs, you know, blah, blah, you know, don't talk about the wife because she's gone, you know, and I just have all these things, likes to go to Florida, whatever, you know. So those are, you know, when you have the client. I think when you're on a development side, it's really just, you get good at finding, you know, your niche and where you need to be. Some association meetings are better than others. You know, some, you know, like there's one association for, you know, in my industry where you go and it's just all consultants. That's all it is. When I was a solopreneur, it was awesome for me because these big firms would get busy and they would sub me out, you know. So I would be going under the guise that I worked for these guys, but, you know, I didn't care. You know, so sometimes that's good. But you know, you have to know, you know, like where a lot of, like, Chamber of Commerce can be helpful for new business. But it, you know, like most of the time, I'd say the majority of my work came from referrals.
Yes.
So new work would come from just somebody referring me. And I know my husband's business, you know, in the architecture space, same way. You know, he's tried to do different type of advertising and things, and in the long run, just doesn't pay.
I like it.
Oh, go ahead.
I like what you said about writing down in the notes when clients had two dogs or the kids' names and so forth. And it's right. It's connecting with people and building relationships. I have a freebie I do, which it tells people about customer relationship management systems and what to put in there, besides their email address and the project name and so forth, the proposals. But you put in their birthdays, put in there in the pro football or college football, because at the end of the day, you don't even have to have a contract with them. I still email a client I haven't worked with in 6 years.
Yep.
And in 2 years ago, he was doing a triathlon. He asked for a donation. I did a donation.
Yep. Yeah.
Because I've cultivated a relationship with him. And even though they're no longer a current client, if I go out on my own, stay in corporate, I still have that personal relationship. And I don't think we do that very well as engineers, even using technology, sending an email. It's very, very, and I know he's a Longhorn fan. He's from South Texas. He's called Rich Uncle by his nieces and nephews, stuff like that. So it is very important to remember those things and have them written down or stored somewhere. As you get older, write them down. But it is truly key.
It is. And, I tell this all the time, so after my business was purchased, this is my third firm that I've worked with. And I tell, all of them, all the big wigs in the firm are always, talking about, the importance of the company. And I always just sit back and I just just smile in my chair, because it has nothing. If they want to, if my clients want to work with me, they're going to follow me from this firm to this firm to this firm.
Yes.
I don't care. You can sign, non-competes, all that kind of nonsense. It doesn't matter. If they want to work with you, they're going to work with you. And that's what, it's all about, developing that relationship, and that they trust you. It's, it's a, oh gosh, what is it? They have to, they have to like you, and they have to trust you,
Yes.
and that's just, that's just two things that are, once they know how you work, and they know, okay, if Karen says I'm going to get an email on Wednesday, I'm going to get an email on Wednesday.
Yes.
That's it. It's not hard. It's not hard. We make it hard. We really do. And you just, I learned so much from Stephen Covey with, how you feed, he calls like feed the well or feed the bank. So like you're depositing. Every time you work with somebody, you're making a deposit or a withdrawal. So, you have to, just like any good banking, you have to have more deposits than you have withdrawals. So you can screw up and not ruin a relationship with a client, but you want to make more deposits than you do withdrawals.
I absolutely agree. It is very important to cultivate those relationships, and a lot of people lose that, especially in the tech age.
Yes.
Oh, we're on LinkedIn. We're connected. Yeah, no. Personalized message, even if it's an email, will go much further than a like on their 15th anniversary at a company.
Right.
Say congratulations. I see you're doing great things at the employer, because at the end of the day, if nothing else happens, like you said, Karen, this is your third consulting firm since you sold your business.
Yeah.
You can literally call up clients like, hey, are you guys hiring? And they're okay with that.
Yeah.
You built that relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can say, you can do that on LinkedIn, but then you say, hey, we should do lunch.
Exactly. Absolutely. It is so, technology helps us because we can kind of track where people move from company to company, or as their positions in corporations change, they start businesses. So it helps us in that aspect, but people forget the human side. We still need to have that connection. So it is great. So you gave us some great resources to go through, how to find and connect with clients, potential clients. You went through, told us your story, how your husband, who's also an entrepreneur, and those of you like my spouse would never understand that. Talk to them. may not, you may be like, you know what, you got a year, or negotiate 36 months, something, to give it a try if it's really what you want to do.
Yeah.
So Karen, thank you so much for joining us. Let my followers and the audience know where they can find you.
Sure. My website is karenauld.com. So it's KarenAuld.com. And you can find me there. There it is. And, yeah, there's also information about my, my day job as well on that website.
You're the weight loss coach.
I am. So yeah, my coaching that I do, which I call my side hustle. So I teach entrepreneurs, but I work on, people that are procrastinating, people who are, they're scared to take that next step because they don't know what that next step should be. Mm-hmm. And they're just in that constant, oh no, and they end up doing nothing. So my whole thing is to get people connected to why they are procrastinating and get them through it. And I teach at our local community college. So if anybody's in the New Jersey area, check out Raritan Valley Community College. And I teach a class called Mastering the Mental Side of Business.
Wow, very good. Very good, Karen. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you next time, when we'll have another great guest who's an engineer plus an entrepreneur, as I call them, entrepreneur. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome.